Tonight's guests with Richard Littlejohn, Gary Newbon, Ray Wilkins and Garth Crooks. And that's in 40 minutes here on Carlton, right after the news.
From ITN, News at 10 with Trevor McDonald.
Blair's election offer, a bond of trust with Britain. 2 bombs found after a day of motorway chaos. Eurotunnel admits delays after the Channel fire. And the face of the world's biggest fraudster. Good evening. With exactly 4 weeks to go to polling day, Tony Blair set out his plans today to return Labour to power after almost a generation. He based the party's appeal on trust. He said voters should trust his party and trust him. But he said there were no instant solutions. His 10-point contract included promises on class sizes, income tax, hospitals and crime. Mr. Major, who launched a Conservative manifesto yesterday, called Labour's more contrict than contract. Mr. Ashdown, who publishes his tomorrow, said the Labour manifesto was thin on commitments. Here's our political editor, Michael Brunson.
To the strains of the song Things Can Only Get Better, Labour launched the manifesto which will determine its fate for years to come. What's driven Tony Blair in drawing it up is his conviction that the Tories have forfeited the nation's trust through a combination of broken promises and incompetence. And so, surrounded by the shadow cabinet in the grand hall Labour had hired to give this launch a sense of occasion, he set out his policy commitments with, as you'll see, a hand-on-heart gesture. He called them his bond of trust with Britain.
They are clear. They are right in the guts of what moves and concerns people in this country. Schools, hospitals, crime, jobs, industry. And we want to be held to them. They are our bond of trust. Most of all, my bond of trust with the people of Britain.
The policy commitments are the ones Labour has already spelt out. To cut infant class sizes to 30 or under as part of their making education the first priority, to get 250,000 young people off benefit and into work, and to treat an extra 100,000 NHS patients. Mr. Blair promises no rise in income tax rates. VAT on fuel will also be cut. And as a start to its law and order package, Labour will speed up the prosecution of young offenders. So, nothing new? Too cautious? Mr. Blair made a virtue of it. We are not promising the earth, he said, and for a very good reason.
This is our historic opportunity. If we blow this opportunity, we blow our place in history. And it's as simple as that. And we've got no intention of doing that. We haven't come this far to do that.
But the Liberal Democrats said that far from committing themselves to overly grandiose schemes, Labour had hardly committed themselves to anything at all.
Throughout this document, the words are warm, but the actual commitments are very few. And where there are commitments, they're very minor indeed.
Somewhat surprisingly, the Tories said that the whole Labour manifesto was a payoff to the trades unions.
New union rights, the union's job-destroying agenda, a return to tax and spend, militancy in the classroom. The warning could not be clearer.
Mr. HESELTINE said the unions would block all further privatisations. With proceeds from them cut, there'd be a £1.5 billion black hole, so Labour would have to use their very first budget in June to put up taxes. I put that charge directly to Mr. Blair.
Now, what are you going to do in that budget apart from bringing the windfall tax? Anything else?
Well, we have made it absolutely clear. I'm not going to start writing the budget now, but it is a welfare-to-work budget. The reason we have to do that is that if we're going to make a start on tackling these huge problems of youth and long-term unemployment, then we've got to tackle that straight away. Otherwise, we won't be able to reduce the money that we're spending on these rising benefit bills.
Okay, so you're saying it's going to be just about that. You're not going to start, for instance, doing things on national insurance contributions. I know you won't do it on the basic rate, because you said you won't. But are you going to do anything else apart from the narrow focus of getting the Welfare into Work programme up and running through the windfall tax?
It is a welfare-to-work budget. I'm not going to write it
No, but I mean, it's going to be very limited, yes?
Exactly, and what I'm saying to you is, on national insurance, as I said earlier on the radio this morning, we've already given a commitment. You know, the raising the national insurance ceiling, which was the Labour Party policy before the last election, Gordon Brown made it clear that was not what was going to happen a considerable period of time ago.
So, is it in the bag? Is Tony Blair certain of winning?
Look, I believe that we deserve to win. I believe this country wants change, and I think New Labour's the right change for it. But if you say to me, do I think it's in the bag, or do I have a complete confidence that it doesn't matter what happens, we're always going to win? No, of course not. What I believe is that we should win, that we deserve to win. And what I'm going to do between now and election day is win the trust of the people to make sure of that.
Now Labour's pledges, or lack of them, will be put to the test. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Westminster.
After the manifesto launch, Mr. Blair headed for Scotland, so did Mr. Major. Mr. Ashdown travelled to the West Country. Our political correspondent Jackie Ashley reports on the leaders campaigning.
No need for the soapbox today. John Major's battle bus now has a special hydraulic platform which can be slid out from underneath when needed. In the northwest, he addressed a crowd of around 1,000 people.
Now here in Carlisle, you have one of the great battlegrounds of the general election.
Then it was on to Gretna Green, the symbol of marriage. He was there to symbolise the marriage of England and Scotland, he said, and predicted his defence of the Union would win seats.
I make this firm prediction. We will have more Conservative members of Parliament from Scotland after the election than we have at the moment.
This evening, the Labour leader arrived in Scotland too, ahead of his party's manifesto launched there tomorrow, which will focus on their plans for devolution. It was something of a hero's welcome north of the border, as Labour announced they were targeting 7 key marginals. The strain of the campaign was already showing on Paddy Ashdown as he flew towards Cardiff and then on to the West Country, the latest stop in his whirlwind tour. In Bristol, viewing a radiography scanner, he previewed his manifesto tomorrow, with a promise to increase hospital staffing and reduce hospital waiting. So how would his manifesto be different?
It will be clear, it will be specific, it will be costed, and it will be realistic in a way which the others have not.
And promised Mr. Ashdown there'd be no gimmicks, no surprises. Jackie Ashley, News at 10.
In other campaign news today, the Conservatives launched their Welsh manifesto. Creating a prosperous future was the message from Welsh Secretary William Hague in Cardiff. To achieve that, he said, unemployment must be kept down. He also said Wales would play a strong role in his party's vision of a united kingdom. At Westminster, the Tories launched a rather unusual part of their campaign. They hired an actor dressed in a chicken suit and told him to pursue Tony Blair until he agrees to a television debate with John Major. Labour dismissed that as a cheap stunt. Baroness Williams of the Liberal Democrats went to a West London nursery to launch her party's campaign to win over women voters. She said the Lib Dems would set up state-run childcare centres across the country and make the NHS more accessible both to women and to children. And Michael Brunson, our political editor, is with me again tonight. Mike, let's return to that Labour manifesto launch today. Presentationally fascinating, unsmiling, serious, down-to-business presentation.
Yes, I think Tony Blair really did feel the weight of history upon him today. I mean, he knows, and you heard him refer to it there briefly, that he has made an enormous change to the Labour Party. Now, either this change is going to take them on to victory and government, or it's going to lead to total disaster, a 5th successive defeat. And I think that was why he was determined not to be flippant. There wasn't a word out of place. It was all very tightly controlled.
And what about tomorrow? We heard a preview of what Paddy Ashdown was going to say there. He said he was actually going to say something serious with no gimmicks.
Yes, well, here it is. This is tonight's front cover. Make the difference, it says, the Liberal Democrat manifesto. That's the key message they want to get across, that they are different. Now, as we know, very much on the theme of education, and they're going to flesh that out tomorrow. It's going to say in the manifesto that Britain should be the number one learning society in the world. Some more details on the money. There's going to be, for example, an extra £110,000 for a secondary school with 1,000 pupils in it for books and computers. And one other difference, by the way, in this, they say there's not going to be a single word of attack on the Tories or Labour in it.
Michael Brunson, see you tomorrow night after a huge rally, I hear.
That's it, yes. The Tories having a big rally tomorrow night.